All right, there you go.
And are we live? Are we live?
Yeah, you were live.
And we are live today for your viewing pleasure. We have scoured the internet and we have revisiting the channel. The biggest star in atheism today, the biggest star, bigger than Shannon. Yeah, bigger than Shannon.
No way.
He's got his own show. Yeah, getting there. All right, maybe not Shannon, but getting there. Not Shannon.
Bigger only in size, like physically.
Oh, he's getting there too.
Yeah.
He's chowing down during the quarantine, and he's getting there on both ends. But the biggest star's got his own show. Did you say his own show, Craig? Yes, I said his own show on the ACA, and pretty soon it will be called Truth Wanted, Objectively Jan's Truth Wanted with special guests by the ACA. So it'll be his whole project. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyways, welcome, please. Objectively Dan.
Yay. Woo. Thanks for talking to me, Craig. Really appreciate it.
Anytime, my friends. So why don't you introduce yourself to the channel, tell us who you are and what you do and why you do it.
Yeah, so I go by the moniker Objectively Dan. I mainly do most of my stuff through the atheist community of Austin. So if you're familiar with the Atheist Experience or Talk Heathen, I also have a show there. It's called Truth Wanted. Every week I talk to people about kind of what they believe in, why is kind of the tagline. And so whereas Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen broadly talk a lot about atheism and religion, I do that too, but I kind of expanded. I talk about conspiracy theories. I talk about ways people believe things, talking to other people about their beliefs. And it's led me down some interesting roads. For example, last week, I had a conversation with a guy who didn't think that the coronavirus was real. So we had a conversation with that on there. Yeah. And so it's been a really cool project. And I started it in 2018. October 2018 is when we first got it launched. And it was kind of an idea I had, and I worked it out with Mark Vanderbrake, who's the producer over at the ACA. And so, you know, obviously I'm the host of the show and I bring in a guest every week, but really, you know, it's a group project. You know, I have a lot of people that help make, edit the show and do audio engineering and stuff like that. So really it's a product of love because we're all volunteers that help make it. You know, nobody's making any money off of it. All the money that gets donated to the show and other shows goes straight to the ACA for all of our, you know, projects and stuff and help improve our show. So it's been really cool. I really enjoy doing it.
Well, and two observations about the show right off the bat, and then we'll ask you about your background. First of all, I think I'm the only Christian who's ever guest hosted the show. I guest hosted once with you, right?
Yeah, well. So far, you've been the only Christian that's guest hosted, and that was something I wanted to do more people of different beliefs as guest hosts. That hasn't happened as much, but I've definitely had lots of different callers and stuff. But yeah, as of right now, you are the one and only Christian that is guest hosted, which is cool.
Yes. Yeah, it's all. I may be the only Christian who's guest broadcast on ACA altogether, I think, unless there's somebody else. But
I think so. Yeah, I think that was the first time it happened for the ACA, which was really cool. I want to point out, by the way.
Did you get in trouble for it?
No.
But you brought the enemy on the program.
No. But I will say,
on the program.
You know, if you watch Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen now, they bring on a lot of guest hosts, and that's because of me. Like they figured out, hey, Dan can do this stuff every week. We should start bringing him in. So they got that for me, I think.
Right. I just found out today that V La Bianca is actually a host of that show. I did not know that.
They are now. Yeah. And they've been hosting for quite a bit now, and they've been doing a really great job.
And the other thing is that your show, generally speaking, is a lot more open-ended and philosophical than the standard Atheist Experience show. That's at least how I would describe it. Is that how you would?
I think so. You know, I try to base my approach to topics in street epistemology. So I'm generally asking lots of questions to people. And when asked my opinion on things, which happens all the time, you know, I talk about it, but I like to hear my callers' perspectives on things and try to flesh out those conversations and make people feel comfortable. I think there are some people who would watch Atheist Experience and be like, man, that's really intense, but I would never want to talk to those people because they seem really smart and I feel really intimidated. And it's like, I want to cultivate a totally different environment. I don't want anybody to be feeling intimidated when they're talking to me. I want people to feel open and welcome. And so I just kind of creating a safe space for conversation is really the goal.
And we'll get into this in depth in a minute, but when Matt Dillahunty was on the show, I that's one of the few I didn't really watch. I don't remember why. What happened with that? Was it because he's usually, he's usually in debate mode on Atheist Experience. Somebody calls up and he's trying to knock them off their points. That's kind of what his thing is. And was his thing different on your show or not?
So Matt,
because he has a genial side.
Oh yeah, Matt is if you know Matt in person, I mean he's a really sweet guy. But there are certain expectations when people have been watching him for years and years. They expect Matt to on Atheist Experience, they expect Matt to respond a certain way, so they approach Matt with a certain way. And so if you approach with those, that kind of bleeds into the talk. Actually, when Truth Wanted first started, a lot of the calls we got, there were people kind of ready to fight. It was just like, hey, I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to do something a little bit different here.
People were doing that to you? They were
a little bit.
Well,
they didn't know who I was. They didn't really get what was going on. Pretty much. And so, my goal has always been to do something just a bit different. I'm glad that the ACA can have shows like Atheist Experience and Truth Wanted, because we can have, all kinds of different approaches.
It fleshes out the dialogue, because I think both approaches. There's this guy, Pleasure of Doubt. He's an atheist, and he's a friend of John and I. He's a friend of the channel, but I was going to diss him, but I've been dissing him. I get in trouble for it. He doesn't like debates but I think debates there's a time and a place where a debate is the right thing.
Sure.
Because it chisels out the ideas. And then there's a time and a place where you have more genial philosophical conversations like your show, that are more open-ended and discursive and not combative at all, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel the same way. I used to watch I don't watch as many debates nowadays, I'll be honest with you. But I've watched a debate or two in my time, and I've definitely gotten into debates with some people. Right. But the fact is, if your goal is to really change people's minds, as you know this, Craig, right. Debates isn't always the best tool for that. Sometimes it takes a bit of more, explanatory or exploratory questions is what I meant to say. And kind of picking at, the heart of people's beliefs and why they come to the conclusions that they do. And so, if somebody asked me to do a debate, I haven't really done that before. I'd be down to do it, but I'm just trying to introduce people more to another way of kind of going about these things. So
these type of interactions, which I honestly think your show has my seal of approval. I've made a couple of videos talking about your show, and I say that it's 100%. Even when I was talking about the Street Epistemology, I have said if Objectively Dan is a version of Street Epistemology, 100% my seal of approval, because you seem to be more about information gathering, conversing, making people feel safe, so we find out what is the truth undergirding what they actually believe. So it's more of a real conversation than anything else. That's how I judge it. How do you see it?
Well, thanks, Craig. I appreciate you saying that. I would agree with you. That's like the hopes I have for the show. And a lot of that is kind of drawn just from my experiences as being a former Christian. I kind of came to the atheism scene in part through Street Epistemology, and that was an influence on me. And so I recognized, if that can work with me, and that kind of flows with how I think about things, then it probably works with other people too. I think for a long time, when you see these kinds of talks on the internet, it tends to get pretty vitriolic pretty fast.
Well, it breaks down into teams, and you're just trying to score points against the team. And even if that's ultimately your goal, even if, as you said, even if my goal is ultimately to convert people, I'm going to be a lot more successful if I explore a common ground with them, break bread, have a normal conversation. Right. Like, I don't agree with Craig about a lot of what he thinks, but he's a reasonable person.
No, but even now, Craig, I mean, this conversation we're having right here, this really wasn't a thing on YouTube like 5 years ago.
That's what I was trying to tell you in DMs. That, I totally agree.
I think in general, more of these kinds of conversations are happening across communities, which is great. And that's the kind of world I want to live in, because I know at the end of the day, not everybody's going to think what I think. We live in a democratic society. with people with all kinds of worldviews and perspectives. So, even if I think I'm 100% right at the end of the day, I still got to work with other people who disagree. And so you got to figure that out.
Yeah, I totally 100% amen. And at the very least, it's a lot more interesting and entertaining to have a conversation that is non-combative, and I find it more enjoyable. I actually hate fights, honestly. I really do. So like, that's a lot of it too. I would much rather have a conversation with somebody that's reasonable and fun and interesting and whatever than a combat. I can do debates, and I've been in a bunch, and I'm going to be in more. So it's not necessarily that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you came through. I'd probably post the link to it. You were actually street epistemologized as a young little evangelist, right? You were like, how old were you? You were like 20 or something?
When I first talked to Anthony Magnabosco, I was 19 years old. Right. And so, yeah, but I think it's easy to look at that and say, oh, Anthony is the reason why I am an atheist today. And I think that's not the best characterization. Did he have an influence on my path? Absolutely. But the truth is, my conversion or deconversion experience, depending on, what camp you're in, maybe, was really drawn out over the course of at least a year and a half. And probably, even more than that, if we're talking about the total thoughts I've had in my lifetime about this kind of stuff.
Right. So you were entertaining doubts as a Christian, or you were heading towards fence sitting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Christian. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And even though in that video, I said I was 100% sure in my faith, I don't think that was true. I don't think that was true at the time. And I can definitely say that wasn't true now.
So he just started a ball rolling that was already in progress.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a stepping stone in the path for sure.
Now, let me ask you a weird question, because I've actually cited this in one of my videos. In that, there was a stage in between where you were exploring, and you were not quite a committed Christian, but you weren't an atheist yet. And you went to like a Hare Krishna meeting or something like that. Tell me about that a little.
So, I went all kinds of different places, when I was kind of exploring. And part of that was some Hare Krishnas that came to the campus I was at the time. And I was kind of figuring some stuff out. It wasn't too long after I talked with Anthony. And this story is a story I cite in my deconversion because of the specific lesson I learned from it. And what it was, when I had these meditation experiences with these people, I realized, wow, I'm feeling something here. I'm definitely feeling something. And this isn't, there's not a whole lot of explanatory power that comes with what I'm feeling from the Christian worldview. I didn't feel like the Christian worldview was really sufficient enough to explain what this was. Clearly, I don't think this could be the Holy Spirit, because this isn't a Christian meeting of people. None of these people believe in God in that way, or Jesus in that way. And I realized I had to kind of recontextualize these experiences I was having. And I didn't,
because according to what you believed as a Christian, it wouldn't be possible for you to have experienced anything with these guys, right?
Either that, or it was demons or something, like it didn't really work that way. But like I started to look more into the science of the brain, and trying to figure out how some of these experiences might come about. And I realized, this is the result of specific chemical processes and environmental pressures and stresses that I'm feeling. I'm in a group of people.
I use it as a citation when people were talking about religion as a mental illness. I was like, look, you don't even have to believe the underlying core beliefs. If you participate in a ritual that is meditative in nature, or prayerful, or worship music, there's a part of it that is purely physiological, and your physiology is going to respond.
Yes.
And you would probably agree with that, right?
Yes, 100% would agree with that.
Okay. So you didn't become a Hare Krishna and you didn't go, these guys make a lot of sense.
That was the interesting thing, right? Because it was like, oh, I'm experiencing something and I don't believe in any of this. Like, I don't think the stuff they're saying is true, but there's something here, and so
that's exactly how I use it in my video. And so you're seconding it. Yeah. There's a part of this that is purely physiological. So if I took you to a church and this is where I was going with it. If I took somebody to a church and they participated in the worship at my church, which my sister did, they will feel something.
100%. Yeah.
And may even be powerful. My sister broke down in tears.
Yeah.
Is she a Christian now? Nah, not really. Is she a believe in God? Nah, I don't think so. I don't really know how she reconciles that. But there's a part of it that is purely physiological. That's why I brought you up in the video. So we both agree. Okay.
Yes.
Now, what else did you explore in that exploratory period?
Well, another thing that was really influential on me was I started to change a bit in my politics. And in tandem was the change in my religion. They kind of both happened at the same time.
Right. You became more liberal, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before that, were you a conservative or?
I grew up if I had taken a test, I'd probably come out as like a centrist, but I definitely grew up in a conservative town. I grew up in Waco, Texas. So, wow. So that should tell you a bit about the kind of influences that were me. The Waco, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And so, obviously there's a lot of environmental influences there on my politics, right? Family and friends believing all kinds of things and me adopting some of those beliefs, sometimes unconsciously. And, college is a great time to kind of reflect on some of those beliefs and realize.
Did you go to a Christian conservative college or normal college?
Nope. I went to a public school. And it was the same school that Anthony saw me at in that video. So I was, at that campus.
So you were in the minority there. You were evangelizing, but that's
I was evangelizing. Yes, I was a part of an organization called Crew, and I was on campus evangelizing when Anthony talked to me. So yeah, that happened.
Right, but that's like, I went to a normal college, but I wasn't a Christian in college, and I didn't know any. I knew one evangelical Christian guy, and I thought he was really goofy and harmless, and I liked him. I got a kick out of him, but he was the oddball. He was the one person in the dorm. I'd come back, drunk at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd chat with him.
Being in Texas, I'll say this: being in Texas, it's not unusual to have pretty large Christian groups, even on public school campuses.
That's probably true because this was SUNY Albany in New York. So it was really unusual. There was a group that came by that had this thing called Rock and Rollers Search for God. And I went to it, ironically. It was about how if you play Led Zeppelin backwards, it's of the devil. And I went to it. I couldn't get any of my friends to go. I went to it as this is going to be really entertaining. And I was everybody else in the room was there for the same reason. Like they'd show a picture of Sid Vicious and the whole place went, Sid. So everybody else was there for the same reason, ironically, to like bug out on what these Christians were selling us, just
that's funny. Time. Yeah, I mean, if you go to any public college in the state of Texas, and you'll find at least one Christian group there. I mean, that's pretty standard. And the one that I was at was a pretty large school, so there was a lot of Christian groups there. Right.
It's totally different in New York. And interestingly enough, your experience of having everybody presuppose you as a conservative Christian, how I grew up, every one of my friends is a liberal. Every single one, bar none. There were no Republicans. There was one Republican guy, Vinny, and we playfully teased him all the time. So all my friends were Democrats. Everybody I knew, like, it's the, what you always hear about, the East Coast liberal elite. That's where I grew up.
Yeah. I mean? Mm-hmm.
It's a real thing because I didn't know any real conservatives until college, and no opposite points of view there either. So.
That's interesting because I didn't know. I mean, I knew some, but I definitely didn't know as many liberals as I did till I went to college. So,
right. And then you started becoming a little more left because you just started thinking about it and developing your own opinions, or
it's interesting. I read a lot of kind of, I don't want to say leftist ideology. I'll say more liberal ideology, maybe through the view of Christianity. I started
which you pointed out, social gospel, I think you called it.
Yeah, social gospel movement stuff. I started getting into that. I started listening to Mike McHargue. I started listening to the Liturgist podcast.
Oh my God, Mike McHargue. Yes, that's the guy I always bring up on my channel. I know that guy. I talk about him all the time.
Yeah, no, if you know Mike, that's cool. I'd love to have Mike on my show because he was
I would too. Let's do it.
He's a huge influence on me when I was a Christian. Absolutely. Because I found a way to kind of make my worldview work. I was having all these questions and doubts, and Mike was the kind of guy that was saying, hey, that's totally cool. Here's some things about social justice you should probably know. Your views about LGBT people are probably problematic and stuff. I was like, whoa, that's a lot to kind of take in, but it started to make sense with to me when I really started to look at it. So
right. Well, that's exactly why I bring him up, because he's an in-between path that would be a lot more palatable to atheists. That's why I started bringing, and he reconverted. I'm pretty sure you know that, right?
Yes.
Or you were dealing with him when he had reconverted.
Yeah.
Right.
And, so that was helpful for me. That was a good tool for me to kind of view the world through for a while, because I was really confused and didn't know what to make of my life for a bit. I kind of went in and out of believing and not believing. And that was kind of a good middle path for a while, until eventually I dropped it all together at one point. So
right. That's like the God is Gray. You probably know her. You've heard of her, right?
God is Gray. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
A lot of atheists like her or are friends with her. Mr. Atheist, I think, is actually friends with her, and Jacqueline Glenn is. And it's a middle ground. She's she's politically liberal or socially justice liberal, but a Christian still.
Yeah, any Christian that's not too dogmatic, most atheists are probably going to be okay with them,
It depends on the atheist. It
depends.
The atheist has to be not dogmatic too.
That's true. It also, so like, I don't have, I guess where I grow up and where I live, I don't have the privilege to just be like, you have to accept what I believe or else I can't be friends with you or whatever, because I would have my friend groups will go way down. Yeah. So, I guess I've kind of learned to adapt and work with that. I guess maybe if you live in an area where that's not a problem, I can see where you can be a bit more critical for people. But, I guess it's just a product of my upbringing where I just have to kind of integrate other people's worldviews into my life, because they're there and they're going to keep being there. They're not going to stop being there just because I believe something different. So.
Yeah. I mean, ironically, it's the same in reverse in the circles that I've traveled in, grow up. You can't be openly conservative or Christian. You have to make peace with the liberals and the secularists in New York. It's the exact opposite as Texas. It's the same idea. There's a definite power structure, social structure. So most of your town growing up was conservatives, Republicans, and Christians, right? Conservative Christians.
Yeah, Dave Olivero, I don't know if you know him. He used to be a Christian, founded a few churches in Waco, has a great joke about Waco. I think it's the best thing ever. He says there's more Christians than people in Waco, which it just makes me laugh, because it's true on a very fundamental level. Everybody there is a Christian to some degree or another. At least it feels like, right now. The demographics have been changing a little bit, especially in the past decade. We've seen a lot more people move into Waco and stuff. But
right.
Me growing up there, yeah, totally. 90% of the people you talk to.
And you still live there?
No, I'm in Austin. I'm in Austin because I'm a part of the atheist community of Austin.
Okay.
So,
and Austin has the reputation, like Linklater. Those movies are all Austin based, right?
Yeah, Linklater is from Austin. He and makes all of his movies in Austin, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Dazed and Confused, I think, was a town outside of Austin, and
Boyhood was filmed in Austin too. Yeah. Pretty much all the stuff. But
and Austin has a reputation of being like Seattle, like a liberal enclave.
Austin is like the Portland or Seattle of Texas. Yeah, right. I'd say that's pretty true. And we're kind of the atheist mecca as far as atheist personalities on YouTube. There's so many that live
all
here.
Why is that? What happened? It just because of ACA, or?
I think the ACA is a big catalyst for it. Yeah, because for a while, there wasn't atheist personalities on the internet, except, the ACA was one of the only few for many, many years. And then as YouTube started, more people kind of developed. But I think because the community here has always been a thing, other atheists have come here. There's lots of people that have come and moved here just for the ACA. I, in part, moved to Austin because of the ACA. And so, yeah, I think people just kind of congregated here and have just really liked being in one community.
Did Drew move to Austin?
Drew did move to Austin. Yeah,
okay.
he was.
I always thought he lived there. When he said he was somewhere in Texas, I was like,
he lived in Fort Worth, and now he lives in Austin. So now he's here too. So we're all just here, just hanging out.
So you guys all are like a crew now, right?
Hell yeah. Drew's my boy. You know that.
Yes, I know that. You guys should come on the show together. Drew said it was a good idea. So let them know. And we should try and get Mike McCarthy together. I'd be down for that.
I have
If
no
you want-
contacts with Mike. Mike's too big. I don't
Right,
know.
but you're a bigger fish than me, so you probably have a bigger.
I've
'cause you have a
tweeted at him
show.
before. He's never said anything. Now, actually, I did comment something because there's a group on Facebook he's in, and he did respond. But I don't know about asking him. I don't know. I don't know what he's up to these days. I'd have to see.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. All right. We'll keep it on the back burner then. It's an idea for the future sometime. So
Yeah.
tell us about your cool new show. You've had it for what, a year?
I've been doing Truth Wanted. It started in October of 2018, so it's a year and a half, almost 2 years now. I've been doing it, and
what's the first thing you have to say about this year gone by? Like,
in terms of the show,
just first impressions of the experience itself, or what happened?
well, this year has been like honestly one of the best years for the show. I mean, every episode I feel like we've had some really interesting calls this year, and we've just been able to expand and go to places I never thought we could even go to. I really want, the thing about doing a call-in show is it's only going to be as interesting as the people who call in can make it. I can host and talk and talk to my guests and banter all day, but the meat and potatoes is the calls. And so the more people that watch it, the more kind of interesting conversations I get to have. So yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Do you hear that? Characters who listen to my channel. I got some characters. You should call up Dan. It's a cool. There's one guy who calls your show, or used to, the perennialist. I think he called when I was there. He's a recurring character on the. He's a recurring audience member.
He hasn't called in a minute, but I've there's now the ACA, we have a soundboard now, and Vern, our audio engineer, is always using it on me. And there's a quote I said one time. It was like, I don't know, it was like, atheists, perennialists, Christians, oh my, we got them all, or like something. It's a clip that he uses on me all the time because I have more sound clips than like any other host except maybe Matt. I think. I don't know why. I guess I'm just really clippable.
Now, what were some of the most interesting either guest hosts or moments of callings?
I've had some weird calls. I've had people tell me I'm a wizard. That's kind of an ongoing joke.
Really? A wizard, huh?
A guy said he could look in my eyes and tell I was a wizard. That was weird.
I kind of get that too. What was he going on?
I don't just kind of agree bullshit. I think that's what he was going on. Yeah, but
sounds to me like insight, but whatever.
Hey, if
tomato.
If somebody wants to show me how I can conjure my magical abilities, I'd be down, but yeah, I've had, there was a guy calling in about, I've had some flat earth calls. I've had, a guy who believed in Bigfoot. I've had all kinds of stuff. Aliens. I've had a little bit of that too. And those are the ones like that. That's what it's all about to me. Like that's the kind of stuff I want to dig into. Because
so do you do a version of Street Epistemology on like an alien person or a Bigfoot?
Yeah, absolutely. I use the method as much as I can, for sure. Because
so how does that work exactly?
Well, because the method, all it is doing is an examination of what people believe. Okay, so what the exact specifics of that belief doesn't matter. You can use the method on it, even if you have a lack of belief as well. And that's why we say like you can use it on atheists too. Like you can use it for everything. It's not just for one group of people to use. So like if somebody were to say they believed in Bigfoot, for example, I'd want to know, what do they mean by Bigfoot? First of all, do they mean like is it an animal? Is it a humanoid? Is it a person's? Like what are we talking about? And I want to figure out, why they believe it, and kind of just get to the root of it. Like what kind of evidence are they using? Are they even using evidence? Is evidence necessary for their belief? Like what changes the confidence of their belief? Is it their personal experiences? Is it stories that they've heard from people? Is it pictures or videos online? Like trying to figure out why people believe this stuff is really helpful, just because.
So was there anything that threw you? Like somebody called up with something outlandish and then you dug into it and went,
There was a guy that called in about a tooth being missing, and his parents said that they didn't take it, and that he thought there was a tooth demon. That was kind of weird. I'm assuming his parents were just fucking with him. Can I say fucking on this show? I should have asked before I said it.
Yeah, I mean, no one ever said it before, so I don't know.
Oh, great. I'm breaking.
I don't make money off this channel.
All right.
Yet, so.
Well, I'm breaking new
You owe me
ground.
$5.
$5?
For
All right.
demonetization.
Okay. Well,
it's not monetized, so yes, you can say it.
all right. Well, there we go. That's the nature of live shows, baby. You just roll off the tongue. I've given up on. I realized early on I can't censor anybody. I just let anybody say what I want on my program. But anyway, what were we talking about? We were talking about
Tooth Fairy.
Yeah. So there was a guy that
something.
said, he said that he didn't know where his teeth were going, and he got his teeth back. No, his teeth were still there, but it looked like there were like bite marks in the tooth or something. It was very, very weird. Didn't really know what to make of it. Like the teeth were like it cut in half. I think that's what it was. Yeah, the teeth were cut in half, and then it was just bizarre because his parents said, according to him, his parents had nothing to do with it. I think his parents were just messing with him. But
how old was this kid?
He was a guy in his early 20s is what I remember from the
weird.
call. Yeah, it's really strange stuff. So,
Now, how did Matt Dillahunty interact in your environment? Was he more of a you type call-in person? Was he like more like laid back and discursive, or how did it work?
You mean when Matt was on Truth Wanted?
Wasn't he on Truth Wanted? I thought
he was a guest on Truth Wanted. Yeah.
Okay.
Matt was just being Matt. But he obviously he let me host. I kind of had reins control, and he was a guest on the program. I mean, like a lot of people.
That's right. Yeah. That's an interesting point. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Because on Atheist Experience, he's hosting.
Yeah.
So he controls the call and the flow, and you're still in control of the ship.
Yeah,
He's
pretty much.
Guest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm the one that gets to say no, you're done if I have to, right? I don't drop as many calls on my show.
You're a lot less quick on the draw than they are, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it has happened, but definitely not as often. And again,
why did it happen? Because the person was just being a dick or something?
Yeah. So the one
By the
time
way,
I
can't say dick.
Well, there you go. There was a one time I'm remembering in particular, a guy was being very, very, very argumentative with me and the guest. And he straight up said something like, you just don't believe because, what did he say? He said, you just don't believe because you don't want to
sin.
Or you want to sin. It was something like that. And it was just like, okay, like you're not listening because you're just putting out platitudes that don't really mean anything at this point. Like we had a conversation for like 10 minutes up to that point. It was just like, now you're just insulting the character of me and my guests, and I won't do that. Right. That's not the conversation we're trying to have here. So I let him go. I was like, hey, if you want to try to call back with some better manners, and we can do this.
So he
but
just
you can't
reverted to talking points in combat, basically.
Yeah,
combat
basically
mode, talking points.
Yeah, it was like you could tell that information wasn't going to get through to him. It was just going to be it stopped being a conversation and it started being an attack. And it's just like, well, that's not what this is about. It's not what I'm trying to do. So, no point in continuing it.
But you don't do that frequently. Like that's pretty rare that you hang up on people.
That's pretty rare. Yeah. Well, most people, who watch the show know what it's about, and they kind of get in. They come in with the right expectations. Usually, when that kind of stuff happens, it's someone who's never watched the show before and has either found the show randomly or whatever, and who aren't super familiar with it. But most people who know the show know what's up. So.
Right. They get it. So they're calling in because they have some inclination of what type of show it is. They aren't calling up to do their syllogism on you and practice their argument or whatever.
Yeah, although that happens.
Atheist Experience is a lot different. It's more like you're kind of calling up to do that. You're kind of calling up to present your argument for the existence of God or whatever.
At this point, the Atheist Experience has been on for over 20 years at this point. So I think, over 20 years. And so there's just been a lot of different hosts with a lot of different styles of conversations. But in general, at least with the current show, it's, people try to present with their arguments and the hosts kind of break down why they might be good or might not be, or an atheist is calling in talking about their experiences or something they're thinking about, and the hosts are able to relate to them or give advice.
Right.
So yeah, there's multiple purposes to the show for sure.
What about Talk Heathen? My understanding of Talk Heathen is it's kind of in between Atheist Experience and your show. Like they're a little bit more long form and open-ended, but it's still kind of a debate-ish. Is that right? I've never really listened to them as much.
Well,
I don't have time to listen to all of them.
When Talk Heathen started, it was the two hosts were Jamie and Eric.
Right.
And their, I think, idea with the show was to be a bit more community based. And so it was definitely, I think it started off a lot more with just the advice stuff. And then, kind of living the daily life,
Okay.
as we live, and they do the arguments and stuff too. There's a lot of blur in between the two shows. For a while, I think the biggest difference was Talk Heathen had Eric and Jamie, AXB had, all these other people. And there's been some blends in there for different things, but I think the biggest difference has been the hosts, but now hosts have changed around and have been on different shows and stuff. It does blend. I'm glad Truth Wanted has been I have the advantage because it's just me as the host. And then, the guest host every week. So it's pretty consistent, I think, in what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, tonally, it's really consistent because like you had what's her face? Who's the new girl in Atheist Experience? Not V, the other one.
Maybe you're thinking of Jan.
Belka, is that her name? Jan Belka?
Jenna. Yeah.
Jenna. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Didn't she guest host once?
Yeah. Jenna's guested on my show too.
Okay. Now, what was I going to ask you? So you very rarely. Oh, did Darth Dawkins? You know who that is?
Yeah.
Did he ever call?
Yeah, Darth Dawkins called early on into the show. How'd
that go?
Not great. I mean, you know how it is. It's Darth.
Right.
He did his talking points. I told him I disagreed. I said he said his other talking points. I said that's not what I said. Repeat back what I said, and he, you could tell he's just going off his script. Not much new. It's that kind of stuff's been talked to death. I'm not really interested in that kind of stuff.
Right, but you didn't wind up hanging up on him.
I can't remember if I did. That might have been another time if I hung up on him. That was really early on. That was during the first month or two of the show, I think. So you talk to so many people and all the episodes, they kind of get mixed up in your head, it's hard to remember exactly from which one did I talk to who, but.
Oh, they start to blend together after a while. So you can't even remember who was guesting at that time. And
yeah, I don't even remember who was guesting for that episode. That was from so long ago, but anyway.
So yeah, I mean, he's kind of the example of I couldn't imagine that him doing the script and putting you on the spot has ever been a successful form of evangelizing. I've never seen.
I don't know.
I couldn't imagine that it would work.
There's quite a number of Calvinists that try it on people for sure. I don't know if they were convinced because somebody did it on them. If it does happen, it's pretty rare. I'll say that much because most people who are knowledgeable about those arguments really don't take them too seriously.
Well, and it's also when you put people, I think Matt Dillahunty might have even pointed this out. Even if you are changing someone's mind in a public forum, you are not changing the mind of the person you are actually debating at all.
Right.
Ever. Because in a public forum, you're kind of dug in. And even if you do kind of agree, even if you and I are contesting ground, and I do kind of agree with you, I'm not going to yield the territory in a public debate usually, right?
Yeah, but it's interesting though, because I have had people who've called into Truth Wanted who have called back later saying, hey, you changed my mind on this thing. And that's really
how
cool.
Did that work? Like what was an example of that?
So like one example was a guy who was talking about talking to his wife about atheism and stuff. He was an atheist, but his wife wasn't. And then next time I called in, he said, hey, I listened to you and I talked to my wife about it. Now my wife's an atheist now. It was like, whoa, that's crazy.
Wow.
So, and that was months and months later. And I talked to his wife a little bit too on the show. And
objectively speaking, objectively, Dan, I didn't even realize that. Objectively speaking, objectively, Dan, why do you think that happens? Is somebody like primed and ready to fall, or is it like
why do people deconvert from Christianity?
I think I understand, I definitely understand key elements of your deconversion process. Okay. And I totally get how you started becoming, you started looking into politics. That was a key element, right? You started having different opinions about politics.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I can totally understand how that happens, because you start thinking clearly about, a lot of times in politics, you are raised, what people always say about Christianity, which definitely is true of Christianity, don't get me wrong. A lot of people just adopt the beliefs of their parents and their peer group and how they're raised. That definitely happens. But in politics, it happens for sure. And you don't even notice, you aren't really allowed to question the opposing side in your peer group. I didn't notice it till years later, when I started palling around with Christians who happen to be conservative. Then I noticed that I had all these presuppositions planted in me by people who were liberals. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Who honestly think, that particular, I can't think of it, Sean Hannity is evil. Honestly think that. Honestly thinking, my sister says stuff like that. Republicans are evil. I'm like, hey, come on. My mom would say stuff like that. I always realized that was wrong. My sister would say, oh, they're evil. And I always realized that's wrong. But the presupposition that the opposing side is really kind of bad, don't even entertain their notions, is basic part of human nature, I would say, right?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely a part of human nature. It's really, I think of it as the act of, I don't want to say awakening, because that sounds like getting woke, and I don't want to, go that way. Although, that's kind of part of it. It's more of just an ascension of being your best self. I think being your best self is figuring out all the stuff that you can using the best data available to you. Now, sometimes, especially in this day and age, there is data given to us from sources that may or may not be in our best interests. And so when people kind of seek this stuff out, they might get, a certain leaning on one
you get echo chambers. You get echo chambers on both sides. And that's why it's really hard. And we've become more polarized. It's always been really easy for me to see how another person sees things. Really easy. I never had any trouble interacting with liberals, conservatives, this group, that group. I used to pride myself in being able to float in and out of different groups and just kind of adopt the parts of their core beliefs that I was comfortable with and leave the rest alone. That's always been easy for me to do. But I seem to be rare. It seems to be really hard for other people to do, including my wife.
And part of it is a way of how you grow up and relate to your world. I mean, I had the privilege of going to college and having those experiences and stuff like that. I can easily see how someone who didn't go to those same environments that I did wouldn't have those experiences, wouldn't have, those things to think about. And so that, their worldview is going to be different. So I don't have a preconceived, at least I try not to have any preconceived judgments of anybody who has a difference of opinion or a difference in worldview. My first and foremost goal is to understand why and see if it's a legitimate reason to, hold the beliefs that you do.
Right. So, for example, my mom went through her own version of a deconversion process, having been a devout Roman Catholic when she was in, Italian immigrant. And then she goes to college and finds out some of the things she were taught don't correspond to reality. Now, she never deconverted or became an atheist, but it was the same sort of idea. Some of these things don't match up to what, she was, for example, taught that, a Hindu person is bad, and she met a Hindu person, was like, well, this guy's good. I don't get it.
My dad had the same thing. He was a Catholic that eventually became a Protestant. And I think most people go through religious changes, at least changes in their religious identity through their life. Some are just going to be more dramatic than others. Some of it's going to be their entire theology changes. Some of it's going to be their entire belief structure changes, like for me. But yeah, I think everybody has to change at some point. I would be very, very concerned if my worldview didn't change. And I hope it does continue to change 5-10 years from now. I hope I'm not thinking the same things I do today. but
And
we'll see.
how would the show have helped you change? Are you becoming more organically
Oh,
open-minded?
I mean, I talk to people with stuff I never considered before ever. Like I have, like veganism has come up on the show quite a bit, and there's some really interesting stuff there to tackle. There's been interesting conversations on philosophy and things like that, and I'm blown away by just the different kinds of perspectives I get to talk about every single week. So yeah, like doing the show that I have to be ready to see other people's worldviews because I got Buddhists calling in, I got Christians calling in, I got witches calling in, I got all kinds of people calling in.
Have there really been Buddhists? What Buddhists?
Tell
me about that. That's pretty interesting.
I had one specific caller who called in for he was kind of a frequent caller who would ask me questions about my worldview and would ask me questions about what I thought about particular tenets of Buddhism. Well, specifically kind of Taoist philosophy, but he also kind of had some Buddhist elements to him too. So yeah, just interesting, just different, right? Kind of cool.
Totally interesting. When you were in your in-between phase, did you start investigating like Eastern religions or Taoism or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it all. Like at least I tried to, and like I said, had some experiences with some Hare Krishnas, I definitely found value in the art of meditation. I have an appreciation for it, and there's definitely some techniques there that I still use today to deal with stuff. But I understand that from a secular point of view. That's a growing movement, I think, of people who are using kind of meditation techniques in kind of a secular way, which is cool.
Oh, totally. We have there's a guy who I keep pushing on my channel that we do a whole discussion group on called John Vervaeke. He's a YouTuber. I don't know if you've heard of him yet. Have you heard of him?
I don't think so.
His whole thing is he's trying to build a religion that isn't a religion. You might like him, actually. You probably like him a lot. It's heavily rooted in like neuroscience, and then he tries to gather up stuff. It's kind of Peterson-esque in a sense of that it's gather up parts of other religions and philosophies to try and form this unified whole type of thing. That's how I would describe it. I don't know if that's how my friends would describe it.
Cool.
But he's a neuroscientist and from the University of Toronto, actually, I'm pretty sure. And he's got a pretty big following now on YouTube. And he's not a Christian. He's very empathetic towards Christianity, though, more so than most atheists. But I think he's an atheist, or he's not always clear about him. I'm pretty sure he's an atheist. So you'd be interested in him. Hopefully cool. I'll have him on my channel at some point. You can check it out.
Yeah, that'd be neat.
Okay, so do we have questions? How long have you been on here? Almost an hour?
It looks like almost an hour here, yeah.
Do we have questions, John? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. This is great, guys. Really fun.
Yeah, this was awesome conversation.
Yeah, let me see if we got any questions. We had one earlier on, just as a question from Edward. He was wondering if you know about the Age of Decadence, as in the life cycles of empires and civilizations. Like, I guess Is
that a game, a strategy game?
I think he's meaning it as like the common patterns to the declines.
Yeah. So this is kind of going back to this idea of, what was the real fall of Rome? There's a lot of people that say it was because of kind of the decadence in Rome.
Because of people like you, Dan.
Right. No, exactly. Like Bacchanalianism, stuff like that.
But you guys aren't wild party people. I mean, I was so disappointed. You're supposed to be like, you're not. Are you? You and Drew don't like going to like 3 a.m, do you?
Drew and I.
Rock? You don't.
Drew and I are probably not
square peg.
Really feel that. Yeah, well, that's because we grew up as conservative Christians. Like that's still really tied into our identity in kind of unconscious ways.
That.
Yeah,
it'd be so funny because if like a Christian grandma was watching you and Drew on your first Truth One, and she'd be like, "Oh, what nice Christian young man!
What nice young man!"
And you're like,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's it. That's what it is. But yeah, I don't know if we're the exception to the rule or not. I mean, the other thing too is just being millennials is we're not as party going as some of the older generations are. I've seen some different statistics that suggest, like millennials aren't having as much sex as other generations and like all kinds of different stuff. So I don't know.
There's a reality to the wisdom, because I grew up a child of the 80s, and in the 80s, drug use was as common as the grass. Marijuana, everyone I knew was high at any given time of day. Like, people were high in school all the time. We went out drinking Friday, Saturday night till 3, 4 in the morning. And every town I visited, every town I ever hung out with, same thing. Everyone I knew at college would tell me the same stories. And so it was really, really part of the culture back then. And that seems to have shifted because people have some awareness of how destructive that actually was. That's my opinion.
Maybe, yeah, I think that's a pretty good assessment. And that's not to say I don't, have fun every once in a while, but definitely not as much as probably what the stereotypical, there is no God, atheist, party, hardcore person would be. I don't know what that would be like, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's doubtful. It just doesn't seem to be,
So anyway, I don't know if we answer the question though, asking about the Age of Decadence thing. I think it's something, my dad studied history in college before he switched to his current profession. And that's something that he talked about. And I think that he strongly believed in. And I've had conversations with him about it. I think there's some truth to it. But how we define decadence also is going to be contextual based on the values of our current cultures and stuff. Like, there's a lot of people that would say, like polygamy or polyamorous relationships are part of a decadence culture. And I'm someone who is in support for both of those things. I don't really mind either. So, like that's going to have some subjective values based on your cultural context on what you define decadence to be. So I don't know if we could come to maybe a common definition on how we're kind of defining this stuff, there might be some truth to it, but otherwise I think it can be used as almost a propaganda tool to influence people to do certain actions. Because that was something I heard growing up. It was like, oh, this is how these civilizations fall. So you shouldn't follow into the culture of the world. You should fall into the culture of Christianity because you were taught to be separate from the world, and I think that can be kind of dangerous in certain contexts.
So ironic. What the Christian is preaching is the danger of creeping secularism, is that a creeping amorality seems to come hand in hand. And you are saying it's opposite, that there's correct?
In a lot, yes. And that's not to say that every preacher who's ever taught that is trying to do a mind control thing on people or trying to, but like there is an element to that. And like the people who are trying to separate themselves from the world, the people who are saying we need to follow this Christian way, I mean, that leads to Christian identity stuff, that leads into bigotry, that leads into the otherizing of people. And that's why we see the discrimination that we have seen from Christian communities, unfortunately. To the LGBT communities in particular, but historically, to world societies as a whole, how we've handled colonialization and stuff like that.
So do you think? So you think that's a pretty big inherent risk or evil involved in that type of thinking? Do you see the risk or evil involved in the other side? I think that's what the guy's getting at, like the creeping amorality of secularism. So
it's kind of weird because. I don't think too many, because atheist ideology right now isn't a thing as much as it was for Christianity. I think we don't have the same institutional structures that we see.
That's definitely true.
Yeah,
but might you build them if things continue at the same rate?
I don't know. Like I would be, if there was like an atheist branch of government in the sense of like, how there's like the church that was, part of the governments of Europe, and we had something like that in the United States for like atheism, then that would be weird. But I don't, to be honest, like
literally God help us.
Yeah. Like to be honest, it's hard for me to imagine that happening. There's often the arguments talking about like, oh, Mao was an atheist and the communists were atheists, and really the reason why a lot of that was because religions were harmful to the regime. because these were other opposing ideologies to whatever that particular dictator's ideology was.
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily that atheism was, the
So if
status
you're
quo. It was
if
just,
I'm a practicing Christian,
yeah,
and my first loyalty is to Jesus Christ and the Bible, I'm going to be a lot less receptive to communism and that's what you're saying. That it was,
Yes.
They knew that.
yes.
And they were trying to. So not only is it the opiate of the masses, according to Marx, but it's also something that's a privately held thing that they can't infiltrate. So they didn't want me to practice it.
Yeah,
It's a practical thing.
You can see that today, right now in China, where a lot of the underground Christian churches there unfortunately played a part in spreading the virus because they've gone against government orders. They've still met in secret, and they've still kind of organized themselves in these ways, and have been part in spreading it. Now, that's not to say that the Chinese government is something to be followed or anything, but you can see how why you have to ask yourself, why is the Chinese government against these groups? It's not because they're Christian in particular, it's because they
have their own
organization.
Ways of doing things.
Yeah, they're an organization that they cannot control,
and their authority doesn't hold over them. So
right.
that's a really good point. Actually, I never really thought about it that way, but I think there's a lot to that. That's a really interesting point. Should we ask another question, or?
Yeah.
We went on that one for quite a while.
Yeah. I was thinking,
well, you were on a roll. I didn't want to cut you off. You were doing well.
Yeah. We got a lot of love for you, Dan, in the comments here so far. A lot of
let's do it.
Love your show, and I think we brought in a couple of new followers for your show too, just for conversation. Cool. So I think it's going to be great. There's something for you, Craig. It seems like there's a little bit of confusion as to why you're not destroying the atheists like you typically do.
Oh, is that JB? What a Weisenheimer he's becoming.
Because he can't destroy me.
Oh. Right.
Destroying atheists is too easy, John. That's why I don't do it. I'd rather feign bonding with them, fake bond with them, and then
bonding with me.
No, he's actually making interesting points. If he weren't, I'd destroy him. I promise. But he's giving me a comfortable middle territory where we can have conversations that we don't necessarily disagree. He's not actually presenting anything that I need to take upset. Did he say to me once, by the way, Craig, your beliefs are false? I didn't hear it. So
maybe after a few drinks, but I don't think the show's going to go on long enough for that to happen. So
no, definitely not. Did you go to Faithless Forum last year with I did. Those are all your crew, right? How was that? Was it fun?
Oh yeah, it was super fun. And as of right now, we're still doing it this year. They haven't canceled it yet, so hopefully we'll be able to do it again. And it's going to be here in Austin, so I don't have to go anywhere. So,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
When is it scheduled for, though?
I believe June 26th. I want to say it's like late June.
So we'll put that down as a maybe.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll
totally see. Are there actual questions, John?
Yeah. I kind of had a question, Dan. I don't know how familiar you are with the sort of I don't know, it's kind of a past trend now, but at least for a while it was kind of big, the whole Jordan Peterson phenomenon.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of overlap between both the Christians and the atheists that's kind of interesting. Just kind of interested in your thoughts on him.
Well, yeah. So when Truth Wanted was really started, it also was kind of at the same time when JB was kind of really in the pop culture. So I've had one or two calls of people asking my thoughts. Unfortunately, the one of the reasons why he started off into fame in the first place was because of the rule that was being enacted at the university about transgender pronouns and stuff. So already right there, it's like, his argument was we shouldn't be forcing people to use transgender pronouns and stuff because it's like authoritarian and it's an invasion of people's free speech and stuff. And it's like, I have to disagree and say like, that's not really the intent of that rule. I don't think it's necessarily a slippery slope there, but anyway, that's how it started. And then people started listening to his lectures and he got real popular and all this other stuff. So that's really interesting to me. Matt Dillahunty has debated Jordan Peterson.
Yes.
And I think that debate is really everything. I think Matt's kind of thoughts on that debate probably are similar to mine when it comes to thoughts about Jordan Peterson. There is a deliberate sense of, I don't want to say hiding. It's almost not a non-static position on religion from Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is never quick to make specific claims about his Christian faith. I think he makes it very open so that other people can insert their own interpretations of Christianity onto him. And I think that's a deliberate move on his part. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing per se, but to exclusively call Jordan Peterson a Christian, well, when he was asked, does he believe in the resurrection and stuff, he was kind of cagey. He didn't give like straight answers and stuff.
I don't think he actually believes in pretty sure he doesn't.
Yeah. So like, can we really call him a Christian? Well, maybe not in that sense, but people define Christianity in a lot of different ways. Is he a traditional Christian in any sense of the word? Definitely not. Definitely not.
Right. Totally. I actually called up your show, Dan, when you had Rachel Oates and Rationality Rules, and we talked about Jordan Peterson on air.
Yeah, that's right. We did. I think we did talk about him then too. I've talked about him several times on the show. Not as much these days. Because people have moved on from his domination of YouTube. Yeah, the Jordan Peterson zeitgeist, I think, is kind of been on the decline.
Well, and you also in a school of anti-theists who don't necessarily like him. Like Drew isn't crazy about him. Rationality Rules doesn't like him.
Well, I think the biggest reason for that is because of just the unfalsifiable claims that he makes. And you can definitely tell that when he talks, he's definitely talking outside of his scope of expertise on a lot of things. I mean, people talk about the lobster thing all the time, but also in regards to like Chinese medicine, he's made like really particular claims and just all kinds of stuff that he's talking about. And it goes into the realm of pseudoscience and unfalsifiability a little bit, which I think.
Did you ever look into some of the stuff that was the antecedent to Jordan Peterson, like Joseph Campbell or Jung even, or?
Yeah, I mean, I read Joseph Campbell in high school. And
as a Christian, were they telling you not to read it?
No, we were assigned Joseph Campbell as part of a lit class I had to take.
Interesting. Power of Myth.
Yeah. One of the it was the I think it's Power of Myth. Yeah, the book cover has
some faces, maybe.
It's the one with the Pegasus on the cover. I mean, obviously there's different reprints. It's one of his books we had to read. I was gonna say the one about Greek mythology, but all of his books involve Greek mythology. Right. We had to read one of his books, and that was really interesting, and that was eye-opening for me, because that's definitely a thing. It's like, whoa, look at these religious traditions. Think about your own, compare and contrast, get different answers there. But I was also not as knowledgeable about specific history.
Right, but you were in high school, so you're a committed Christian at that point. Is this a Christian high school?
No, I went to public school.
Oh, okay. So that makes sense. And what were your Christian friends like when you showed them the book? They probably had a attitude about it.
I mean, they were reading it along with me. I definitely went to school with. So I was never a fundamentalist Christian. I always believed in evolution. I never believed the Earth was less than 6,000 years old. I grew up originally in a Methodist church, and then my parents kind of decided that was too liberal for them at one point, I guess, and we started going to a Baptist church. So I kind of have a mix of those different ideas.
I gotcha. Okay, I understand. Do you think that contributes to your not having that much of a chip on your shoulder? About you're not
definitely
an anti-theist in any sort of aggressive way.
Well,
if you're an anti-theist, it's personal and philosophical, not
if you know, for an easy comparison, look at Drew. Look at genetically modified skeptic's life compared to mine.
Yes.
Drew grew up part of his life homeschooled, went to Christian school, Christian college, you know, and had to read a lot of books on apologetics and stuff. I wasn't in any of that. You know, I learned some apologetics here and there. And I went to church and I did the youth group and I did all that, but my world was so different from his. Also, he was taught a lot of different ideas than I would, and a lot of the way those ideas were taught to him were, you have to believe all of this in order to be a Christian.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Yes, I totally understand that.
I didn't have that as much growing up. Was it there in some ways? Absolutely. But personally, it didn't affect me in that way. So,
well, what's interesting about that is my wife, for example, tells me, seemingly with a straight face, that she was raised a born-again Christian. And she wasn't. She was raised in New York. She was a born-again Christian, her mother were. But, you know, she had basically a normal social life. She went out to parties. She had boyfriends. She went to Madonna concerts, you know, and on top of that, she had her Christian beliefs with her mother. But it wasn't the same thing as being raised in even your version of the Bible Belt. Never mind Drew's. Totally different experience.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure.
So like Drew did not go to a secular concert probably when he was 15 or 16, right? You probably did.
He was into some punk music and stuff. Drew is kind of an interesting kid. I think that was part of his rebellion, though. His kind of rebellious phase.
But did he actually like go see, you know, he didn't go see anybody play.
I don't know. He was in the skateboarder scene for a bit. I mean, Drew used to, yeah, dude. Drew's pretty cool. He used to rollerblade. He was in the rollerblading thing, I think, for a minute. And so,
I had a punk band in college. That's what I was going to talk to Drew about.
Well, yeah, because Drew used to play punk too. But anyway, that's, you know, his life stories is overall, I'd say he grew up in a more controlling environment than I did.
Right. Yours was not liberal Christianity per se, but it
wasn't liberal Christianity, but it wasn't fundamentalist Christianity either. Right. It was kind of a blend. So,
right. But does that have to do with you not being so aggressively anti-theist? You don't really have a
probably, yeah. Like I am, you know, obviously I'm at the atheist community of Austin, right? So I have some thoughts about religion, right? Like that's just a given. But yeah, my experiences probably weren't as traumatic as other people's. That's not to say I didn't experience traumatic things. But that doesn't play as much into what I do now. And so I don't have as much of a chip on my shoulder per se. And also, just to be clear, that I am not saying that the people who are anti-theists had some sort of trauma either that affected them to do the way they do. I think a lot of them are doing it because they come to logical conclusions. But all that to say, like my emotional upbringing was only an influence on my anti-theism now because I've seen the harm that it happens with other people.
Right.
Not because
with you, it's more of a reasoned position. It's not, I actually anger at this institution because of what was done to me per se.
Yes.
Is that fair? Okay.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. Yeah.
Okay. Should we ask another question, John?
Yeah. I was kind of interested, given your like sort of like emphasis or background within street epistemology. Is there any ways in which you kind of like use that as well, like during your show, or you know?
Oh yeah, I use it as much as I can on the show. Yeah, whenever I can, I use it now. You know, my version of street epistemology is a bit different from what you see from Anthony and stuff, because what he's doing is he's having a really long conversation, usually with one person for like maybe 30 minutes at a time. I'm on a call-in show. I have, you know, I want to give time to all my callers, and I have a guest host. So I'm balancing a lot of things there. One, keeping the show entertaining, but two, also making sure that I'm kind of digging into people's beliefs appropriately and letting my guests have chances to respond. So it's a modified version. It's not like a full-fledged analysis. We're going to get right into it, but we do talk about things enough to where I think it gets people's minds going, and I think that we do have productive conversations.
It's influenced how your line of questioning with people. It's deeply influential on how you approach a conversation.
For sure.
Fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there like a sort of a tip or trick or method that's part of street epistemology that could help people in having these types of conversations with people?
So, I have, if you look at my personal channel, Objectively Dan, I did a lecture on street epistemology and just the very basics of it. And it's about 40 minutes long. I did it for a conference 2 years ago. And that's kind of, I think that video shows all you need to know about SE. There's lots of different tools and tricks that would probably take more time than what we got left here. But I'll tell people to go to that video if they want to know some of the tips and tricks there.
Great. Yeah. Thanks. All right.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right. We just not really any more questions, but we got a message from somebody. M. Bishop. He says that he loves you and he loves the show. In fact, they were having kind of a argument in the comments over like the infiltration of Marxism leading to the decline of like they're having an argument with somebody else in the comments.
Oh, great.
But he was suggesting, I think, to the other guy to maybe call into your show.
Yes, they should call into my show, and then we can discuss it there, and you could point out how wrong I am. I don't care. We'll find out.
Yeah. Oh, what's the like day and time that you do your show?
So Truth Wanted premieres live on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central Time every Friday. And then either that night or the next day, the shows get uploaded to iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts from.
Also, do you have a list? One of the things that I was going to ask you in DM, do you put out ahead of time who's coming when?
So I have done it in the past, and then other times I don't. And there's reasons why. One is I don't want to give false expectations for people because people cancel, things come up, problems happen, whatever. The other thing is, I sometimes people, when they do cancel, I have to change things around. And so I might have a guest that is going to come up, but it may not be on that particular date and stuff. So sometimes it'll just be a couple of days before when I'll say who. Depending on the time of year, like beginning of the year, there was some time off because it was Christmas holidays. I was scheduled all the way up until April. And now the coronavirus stuff has started and my schedules had to change a little bit.
Oh, right, because people can't fly there. If they want to fly and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it gets a little bit up in the air a little bit. So
right, because part of the reason I don't call as much as I would is I'm always hesitant that I'm gonna, like, you had Unholy Sarah, I call Unholy Sarah, and then you have Matt Dillahunty next week, and I'm like, oh damn, I called. I'm always like, maybe he's got like someone I really couldn't probably talk to any other way except calling the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the cool thing is I get a lot of different kinds of people on. So sometimes it'll be people, it's like, hey, I like this person's channel. They should get more views. I want them on my channel. And then other people, it's like, you have way more views than me. You're doing a favor by being on my show. Right. So
well, you get some big ticket guests, and I would love to call when, like, even Anthony Magavasco, that would have been interesting. Had I known ahead of time, I would have called then.
So I will say
my welcome and call like every weekend. So I'm always hesitant, because I'm like, well, wonder who's coming down the pike.
He was actually going to be. We have a time scheduled the 1st of May for him. What we wanted to do is we wanted to look at my first video together. And
that'd be interesting.
Examine that. And so we were still talking about that, but we're right now the actual ACA building is closed. We don't know how long it's going to be closed for. I'm having to do the show out here through my apartment and through some online software stuff. And all the volunteers are working online through it. So we'll see when that happens, because I want him to be in studio for that one for sure.
Right. But like I called when you had Shannon. Remember, Shannon was on the show.
Heck yeah.
Like, oh, Shannon.
Shannon is probably my most requested person to have back on. I will say that.
Really?
And I want her to, we've talked, I want to get her back on, but like I have done, almost every single episode I've had a brand new person. And I really like that. I want to keep that up as long as I can, because it's just, that's what it's all about. I don't want to
start recycling.
Yeah. And so Shannon will be back on for sure. I just, I've already talked to her about it. We just got to pick a time and we'll make it happen. So
now I thought I fit comfortably into the spirit of the show, even as a Christian. I didn't notice any.
I thought at the time, I thought you being on the show was one of my favorite episodes, and it probably still is. I say it at the time, it still is one of the favorites because we did a great job. I think we showed that, hey, this is a project that can be done, and that was something I wanted to prove from the very beginning. I was like, you guys got to believe in this thing. I think we can do it if we have the right people on board. And we just set things up the right way. And I think in that sense, I think we've been successful. I'd like to see more people like you on my show. I don't have the contacts for that. Maybe you do, but I want to do more of that kind of stuff because I think that's something that hasn't been done as much until recently.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't necessarily have the contacts in a sense. There's people I can think of, but I don't know them. Like God is Gray would probably be a perfect fit for your show, but I don't know her. I don't
know her either. Yeah.
So I tried to ask her to come on my channel and she didn't really respond. So,
yeah,
I could think of a lot of people who would be good fits, but Mike McCarty, for example, would be perfect, but I don't know him either,
Yeah, I'd probably have to pay for him to get on. I don't know, but you never know.
You should have paid for me. I could use the money.
Well, tell you what, as soon as I get paid for doing this, Craig, I'll start paying you. How about that?
So there's no when they're doing Atheist Experience, that's all volunteer work.
Everybody. We have one person at the ACA right now that's on payroll, and that's our producer, Mark Vanderbrake. Okay, so he's the guy that's making sure this stuff's getting posted and doing the descriptions and doing everything. So he is at the library as well. He's like the building, we call it the library. And so he's managing that. So he's the only person on payroll on the ACA as of right now. And some contract stuff that we've done, but they're not employees of the ACA. So ended like Matt, V, Eric, me, all the hosts, none of us get paid for anything that we do on the show. We all do it as volunteers, and including everybody that works in sound and editing video and stuff like that. They're all volunteers too.
Wow. Okay. And most of the money for the show comes from donations, right?
Yeah. Most of the money that we get from the ACA comes from donations. We're getting stuff from Patreon as well. And then YouTube ad revenues help with that
Super
too.
Chats probably helps too.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So now, I guess unless there's interesting questions.
No.
So when what happened with the controversy with didn't people quit Atheist Experience, and then that's where Jenna and V came from? Did they replace?
Yeah, it's not really my story to tell. I don't want to get into who said what and who said there. I
definitely don't want to go into that. But.
Yeah, they've all said their own piece about it and stuff, and it's something that I think we've moved on from the most part. At least at the ACA, we're still kicking and doing our own thing. So I leave it to those people to kind of tell their stories and what they think about it. And it's I don't really think it's my place to make any comments on it. So.
I think I watched one of the We're Leaving videos that was on somewhere. I forget exactly who, and I wasn't really clear on the details from what they were saying, but they haven't started anything as far as I know. That nothing new has come up, right?
I mean, as far as I know, I don't think so. And I just do my own thing with Truth Wanted. I wasn't super involved with all that going on and stuff, and it's just not really something that I want to dig up either. It's just
okay. Fair enough.
Just a part of the thing.
How liberal do you consider yourself? Are you like a moderate center leftist or?
That's a good question, and it's something I've asked myself. Well, I ask myself that all the time, I guess. There's some days where I'm like, just screw capitalism. We just all need to,
Bernie's making a lot of sense.
Yeah, just tear it all down.
I'm a Bernie bro. Are you a Bernie bro in secret? And you're like,
I know. Well, Bernie actually dropped out today. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
I totally saw that. Barely registered on the news. Can't even believe because there's all coronavirus.
Oh, well, I don't. It's registered on my news. I'll tell you that. But
oh yeah, on Twitter for sure. I saw. So I watched. I check on some of those feeds, like Mr. Atheist and V, and a couple of people that I routinely look at, see what they're tweeting about. I think probably Ocean tweeted about it. I'm guessing. think he was a
Yeah.
big Bernie fan.
If I had to choose a label, probably like a democratic socialist. I don't know.
Oh, really?
Maybe so. Yeah. Like but I fluctuate though, it changes all the time. So I wouldn't hold fast and true to that. I would want to take things piece by piece, because I don't know if there's one good label for me to use to describe my exact political compass.
Well, it's interesting too how people's political views, like, I mean, organically, you are now you moved to Austin, which is probably the most left-leaning town in Texas, right? It's probably the only
Definitely the left in Texas. Yeah.
right, and that's probably still, like, my wife thinks she's a conservative Republican, but she probably wouldn't count as one in Texas. She thinks she's like Mrs. Right Wing, and she kind of is in some ways. But I'm not sure if she would be that way. We live in Malibu, which is like some of the most leftist place in the world.
Yeah.
And so it's all a matter of degrees. Like, I'm not sure if Austin would qualify as left wing if it were placed right next to New York City, for example.
I don't know. I've never been to New York. I'd have to see. But yeah, like, there's all kinds of different. I mean, you still get just as many conservatives in Austin as you do in other places in Texas too. I mean, yeah, they're not the majority voice here, but they're definitely here. So I think being here has been great for me, because I get to talk to other people that feel the same way about issues that I do. Not so much in like Waco and stuff, but yeah, social democratic,
right, but social democrat in your circle of friends,
yeah.
in your circle of friends is probably almost the norm.
Most of us are around there. Yeah, I'd say.
Right, that's what I mean. So it's really almost impossible to not start to be swayed by the group you hang out with in terms of how you start to perceive these things.
I mean, yeah, maybe so. I think I was already kind of leaning that way before I moved to Austin, though. I don't know. I can only describe my own experiences, I guess.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't want to move to Austin unless I already felt that way about those issues. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
I
totally. That's what's drawing people. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. People who move to San Francisco know where they're going.
Yeah, exactly.
Then they pal around with the people who have moved to San Francisco and all sorts of
things. And I used to, when I first started Truth Wanted, I would drive from Waco to Austin on the weekends, which is like an 1.5-hour drive. And I do it every Friday just to make the show happen.
Right.
And now that I live here, I can just drive over to the ACA and do it. Well, now I can't because of the virus, but like it was like, I just need to live here. Like, this is just where I want to be. And when I finished college,
this is who I am, kind of. It's who you are, right?
Yeah. Shortly after I finished college, I moved down and then right now currently serving on the board of directors as well. So yeah, it's been awesome.
Do you ever did you used to go back and hang out with people from your hometown and stuff still, or no?
Yeah, I do. And I see them occasionally, and some of them know about what I do now too, which is kind of interesting.
How's that working? Are you alienating to them, or are they?
It depends on the person. There's some that don't talk to me anymore. There's some that I'm still friends with and I still hang out with. So, I had a large circles of Christian friends. I mean, that was like my whole world was just different Christian circles. And now I can't access those spaces as easily. I'll tell you a story though, Craig. This happened to me yesterday. I posted this on Twitter. A girl who I knew and who I was friends with recently just talked to me. Again, just messaged me out of the blue and said that she saw a debate on theology and realized that, hey, like, she stopped being friends with me and stopped talking to me because she figured out I was an atheist now and I wasn't a Christian anymore. And she realized that was kind of harsh and wanted to kind of reconnect because she realized that maybe there was kind of more to this than what she initially thought.
I think I saw you tweet about that. Did you tweet about that?
Yeah, I did. I tweeted about it. And I was just talking to her again before this show. So we're kind of having some conversations, having some dialogue. And it's like, it's people do change. And that's not the only person who has come up to me later and said, oh, I'm sorry. Like we didn't see things eye to eye at first. It's only happened a handful of times, but it is interesting to see like, oh, people do change their mind on these things. And even though they may not have treated me the best the first time, like they came around. So
Okay, two interesting questions, then I think we're going to let you go. To see the Ear Biscuits guys, did you have any idea who they were before? Do you know who that is?
No, I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay. Then all right, never mind. Ear Biscuits. It's like this. I don't really know what it is either, but it was a big deal like 2 weeks ago. There's some sort of Christian. Do you know, John? Tell us. I don't really know. Is John talking?
Yeah. So that link there, these popular YouTubers that they host this morning show called Ear Biscuits, and they have like several other like side shows as well. And I guess on one of their podcasts recently, they kind of went over how they are like come out of the faith of Christianity.
They deconverted
like, they used to be evangelicals, and and so now they've kind of been within the apologetic scene. There's been quite a few different sort of apologists kind of going over their arguments and trying to just I don't know. It's in the kind of
collective
zeitgeist right now.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to look into that because I haven't heard about that till now.
Yeah, I figured you might know about it. You might have, because Pine Creek Doug has done a show on it. You know him, right? Aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Me and Doug are cool.
Did he do a Truth Wanted?
He was on one of the very early episodes. Yeah, but I'd like to have him back on again because he's amazing. He's so good at asking questions.
Oh, that's right. He's a Street Epistemology. I always forget that. So he did a show on it, and then there's this guy Braxton Hunter, who you may know is like a Christian apologist on YouTube, and he did a show from the other point of view. He was kind of upset that these guys had deconverted. I haven't fully watched his video yet. I had never heard of the guys until I saw the controversy. I never heard, no idea who they were. But they started saying a whole bunch of stuff that, like, a lot of atheists say when they're deconverting. Yeah. So then other questions.
Paul Vanderklay, he's also has a couple of videos on his channel regarding that as well.
Oh, that's right. He mentioned it too. That's right. Paul Vanderklay, you probably don't know, Dan, do you?
I don't.
Actually, he'd be great for your channel. He'd be perfect for Truth Wanted.
Cool.
He'd be perfect.
Send him my way.
We could ask him because he does this, like, he's a pastor, but he's also really philosophical, really bright, really smart guy. Talks about, goes into depth about orthodoxy and Jonathan Pajot, and I don't know. He's really insightful, but he's really easygoing. So he'd be perfect.
Yeah. Really friendly, good interlocutor with the different people of different faiths and things like that. So
yeah, he gets along with. He's got atheists on his channel all the time, and he doesn't destroy them. He just doesn't. So I don't know why he's pulling his punches, but he doesn't destroy them. And the one other question I was going to ask you, I've lost my train of thought with the Ear Biscuits guys. What was the question? The last question I was going to ask him, John. It was really interesting. You don't remember?
You didn't tell me beforehand. So.
I know. I'm trying to jar my memory and pretend like I told you so that I think of it. The Ear Biscuits guys.
Oh yeah, let me take your notes. Hold on.
Yeah, give those post. Look at the channel notes I posted.
I found that a video from you, Objectively Dan, and I posted it in the chat. I'll probably put it in the description as well for you.
Yeah, that's my personal channel. I haven't uploaded to that one in a year or two. I've always had ideas for that, but I've just never had the time. If you want to find my show, that's another channel called Truth Wanted. So, if you could post that too somewhere.
Yeah. We've got Truth Wanted in the description. Also have your Twitter, and so we'll put that video in there as well too. Though.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I guess I'm not.
All right, Craig. Did you find?
I'm doing a Biden brain freeze and totally not remembering what the question was going to be at all. But it was a really good one, I promise. It was great.
Okay, well, I believe you, I guess. I don't know what to say.
No, this was what?
You're gonna ask me how cool am I really? And I'd say I think I'm pretty cool, Craig. I don't know. You tell me.
I think you're reasonably cool, but the myth is you're supposed to become an atheist and become this badass nihilist punk rocker, drinking, boozing, cussing, fighting, and you don't do any of that stuff. So
I cuss. I guess we got that out of the way. Cat's out of the bag there. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just me. I don't.
Oh, hold on. That's my wife. Hold on one second. Be back in a minute.
Well, maybe we can. I don't know if he wants to end things here because I think we're wrapping up. Unless there's other questions you got for me, John.
No, there's no other questions. Are you interested at all in philosophy? I was noticing some of the videos that you have of just the cut out from your channel just on certain subjects that you've kind of gone into some different philosophical subjects. Well,
yeah, I mean,
something you're interested in?
It comes up on the show quite a bit. You know, people ask me different philosophical takes on, whether we're in the simulation or, stuff like that. And, I go back and forth with philosophy. I used to love it a lot when I was younger. I never had any formal training in it. Everything I got was from reading books and reading things online and stuff. And so I have a casual interest in it, but now when people want to talk to me about philosophy, I'll be honest, I do cringe a little bit because I'm just not as interested in the hard philosophy topics as much these days. I feel like I've explored that for myself already. Now, for exploring it with other people, that's fine. I'd be happy to teach someone about, what Plato was talking about in Plato's Republic or whatever. But, when it comes to kind of the hard philosophy stuff, to me, it's a lot of just fluff for me. It doesn't really do much for me.
Yeah, you like things to be objective. You want to see there's actual results and predictions.
Well, the Objectively Dan name just comes from the idea that it just doesn't make any, it's just kind of a silly thing to put two things together. Am I objectively Dan? Does that even make sense as a concept? And it's kind of just a meta critique on the way that we use the words objective, because we think we mean it, but we don't actually use it in the way that it's intended. So yeah, that's just how I think people see that and they think, oh, you're like a philosophy dude. You want to know objective? No, it's like, I'm just totally kind of trolling a little bit with the name. Like, it's just kind of a thing.
Okay, I remember my final question.
Oh, good.
Is there anything about Christianity that you still have fond memories of, or that you are warm and fuzzy towards?
I used to lead worship, or at least be a part of a worship band. I used to preach when I worked as a program head at a camp. Like, Thursday night was my night to talk to the boys. And I'd tell them about the Bible and all the kinds of stuff. And so, I enjoyed being a community leader in that sense, I guess. And I enjoyed fellowship with my other Christians, and sharing that time in community. That's something, since I've had to pretty much leave the Christian community, I can't just show up to the church group and be like, hey guys, what's up?
Can I preach a sermon?
That ship has kind of sailed, Totally. I'm a post-Christian now. I'm an ex-Christian. My worldview has evolved and changed to where those structures don't really work for me anymore. And so that's why we have things like the Atheist Community of Austin, so we can build our own community and talk about our own ideas and things like that. Now, of course, I want to try to bridge those gaps as much as I can, which is why I do the show. But I can't, like I said, just walk up into a church and be like, hey guys, what's up? I am Christian Dan or something.
For tonight, I'm pal around with you.
Yeah,
I'm back in action for a night.
Even if they were welcoming of me, it would still be weird. I would think it would make people uncomfortable. So
yeah, there are these type of Unitarian or something churches. I'm not exactly sure what.
Yeah, Unitarian Universalists, and I've been to some of those too, and they're pretty cool. But like, most of the people in the Unitarian Universalist churches aren't even Christians, really. Right. So
Well, one of the guys, atheist, I think his atheist engineer, used to preach there. When he told me that, I was like, what? You preach on a Sunday? What are you talking about? But I guess it's like kind of an atheist church.
The UU church in Waco has a woman there who went to seminary school and is an atheist and preaches there, which is really cool. So got a lot of stuff out of her when I met with her.
Well, interesting. So, all right, my friend, this went about as I thought. Actually, went a lot better than I thought it was going to go. I thought it was going to go good, but some of this was like, I thought really good, like great. Couldn't ask for a better conversation as far as I'm concerned. You want to tell everybody, sign off, say goodbye, and
heck yeah, yeah. Thanks for talking to me, Craig. I really appreciate it, and thanks, John, for chiming in there as well and helping setting this up. I'm pretty open. I'm especially now, it's a lonely time. So, if you want to message me on Twitter at Objectively Dan, I'm open there too. And of course, the show is Truth Wanted live every Friday. We take in calls and I have cool guests every week. So you should check it out. I have, I'll give a hint for this week. I'm going to have somebody on who may or may not be an expert in sovereign citizens. So we're going to probably talk about that a little bit. Yeah, it's going to be kind of cool. At least I hope so.
Not even sure I know what that is. Sovereign citizens.
Well, you're going to find out. So check me out there. And I love meeting new people, and I love anybody who likes Craig's stuff will probably like my stuff too. So please check me out.
Yeah, it's definitely it's an atheist show that most Christians will find palatable because it's philosophical. It's laid back. It's not, Christians don't call up and he goes, "Let me tell you why you're deluded. let me explain to you why you're wrong." And it's a lot more open-ended and conversational.
Yeah, correct? I agree. Yeah, totally.
All right. So we are signing off, kids. You saw him here live, big star right before he happens. Objectively Dan. Pretty soon next year, you're going to be like, Matt Dillahunty. Who? Matt? Who? Is not even a figure in the atheist community anymore. I don't remember that guy. Oh yeah, one time a long time ago. And you'd be like, Dan.
That's right.
And with that, we will say goodnight.
Matt will be in my shadow. That's what'll happen.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's funny. Thanks again, Craig.
Anytime.